Ready to go live. All right, I think we're live. So hello.
Hi.
Hi. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Anyone who's here live, and anyone who watches this after the fact, love to have you here. So my name is Beth Ann Bruninga-Socolar, and we're here on my channel. And with me today is Shanon, who publishes under the pen name SD Huston. So Shanon, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do on your channel?
So I think you covered my name pretty good there. I don't think anyone has introduced me by my full, like Shanon writes on the pen name SEU. So usually I have to throw that part in myself.
Made it
But
very official. Yeah.
yes, you did. So you can also find my YouTube channel under SE Huston as well, where I publish videos about writing, although those are kind of my older videos. My current videos are about my self-publishing path and the decisions I've made in self-publishing my book and all of my marketing efforts and what that looks like. So, and then I have a couple of books published. I forgot you told me I should plug my books.
Yeah,
So
plug your books.
yeah, so the Clash of Goddesses series, it's a trilogy. I have the first 2 books are published, came out in November and January, with the 3rd book coming out in June.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, well, and today, so we are here to discuss a buddy read that we did during the month of February as part of the Black Authortuber Readathon that was thought up and mostly hosted by Margaret Pinard, who's in the chat, so you can click through to her channel. Anyone who wants to learn more about that. And the book that Shanon and I are discussing today is can I get this in? There we go. SEED Among the Thorns by Morgan Lee, who is active on YouTube as an Authortuber. So I will put a link to her channel in the description box down below, and I'm going to just pop it into the chat real quickly.
I think it's funny that you have the physical book of Morgan's book, because I have the ebook, and I did the buddy read with Margaret on her channel yesterday for the Black Authortuber Readathon, and I had the physical book and she had the ebook.
So we're just flipping. Yeah. Yeah, well, I like to buy physical books of self-published books when I can, because then I move around a lot. And so then when I move, when I'm doing a big book unhaul, I can put them in a free book library and hopefully introduce somebody else to a self-published author. Yeah, so that's my strategy. I hope it works and people get more readers. But yeah, so before we dive into discussing some of the nitty gritty about the book, I thought that I would just provide a little bit of the sort of broader context of the story that's happening in this book, because the stakes are really, really high. So the background of the world in the book is we have 3 gods, Cornelius, Demetrius, and Elias. I think I'm remembering those names correctly. And Cornelius and Demetrius focused on a huge fight about sort of who's allowed to live on Earth and who's going to control Earth. And Cornelius ended up with control of Earth, but he has some really weird rules about who he wants living on Earth. He has these rules about purity, so he only wants pure humans living on Earth. And he's banished Demetrius and everybody who he thinks is impure to a prison world called Regnum. That is sort of a weird, I think, multi-dimensional space. Like, it's not really part of the world that we know, although you can, I think, sort of see it in the sky, as mentioned at one point. So that's kind of cool. So in this prison world, Demetrius carves out a livable space. He actually creates a magical school, and he's trying to build an army to break out of Regnum and take over Earth. And so given that background, then we've got some sort of almost regular folks that are caught up in this divine conflict. So we've got a magical family of elementals called the Pearsons, and their job is to guard the gateway to the prison world from the Earth side. So they're trying to keep it closed. But because of a curse a few generations back, they're tied to the Loramonts, which is another family. And then there's a lot of secret stuff going on that it's not clear how much the gods actually know about, which is a cool aspect of the book we can get into later. But it turns out these Loramonts, a few generations back, they made a deal with some literal demons, particularly one sort of demon named Aram. And so they're sort of donating their own souls, and then also using these demons to get other souls to add to their army that's going to try to take over Earth. And there's a bit of a love story there. The sort of original demon Aram fell in love with one of the Pearsons, Aphine, and so they've actually bonded their families together as a result of that love, but in sort of a weird, twisted way.
Yeah.
And so in the book, we're following two main characters, the youngest members of these families who are coming of age in the book. We've got Emerton Pearson and Shaw Loramont. They're both inheriting the full powers of their family lines. They're bound together because of this ancient curse. And they have to decide how much do they want to be loyal to their families who've made all these plans without asking them versus claiming their own individual freedom and forging a new and very uncertain path. So I think that's sort of my setup of the book. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Shanon, or anything that I said wrong?
I think you've covered a lot of it. But I think the demons are called Shin or Shinori. So I think it's an interesting word. That because regnum sounds Latin, where Shinori sounds not Latin.
Yeah.
The best way to say it. So I think there's some influences there, which I think was kind of interesting in the name choices. So
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and I think there was another interesting aspect to those demons, because the demons themselves are called the Shinori, but then they're sort of parasitic on this Loramont family, and so the Loramont characters are called Shin, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. So they're the host to the Shinori. Yeah. Oh, and Margaret's asking a question. I can put a question up. Did any comps come to mind for you guys as you were reading? So that's more of a writer question. So I'm still unclear what you all mean when you talk about comps.
It was the same question we threw out. Did it remind us of any books that we've read?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's a comparative thing?
We kept that one. We kept that. We threw out the original one. Yeah. So it's comparing what books are similar to this one. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. We're going to get to that, Margaret.
Yeah.
Although I think we both have a pretty easy answer to that. But now you have to wait for it. We're going to build suspense.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and so let's just dive into some of the interesting things that we wanted to talk about. So first of all, how would you describe the genre of the book?
So you and I kind of talked about this, like science fiction versus fantasy, and I think it was labeled as fantasy in most places. And it does have kind of a science fiction feel because there's like some technologies there that you wouldn't expect in an older civilization. But I went through my review and did the book again this morning. I actually found it. I don't know why, because I was going through everything really fast, just trying to review everything. And I came across where it said that Cornelius, Demetrius, and I don't know how you said his name. I always said it Elias, the third brother. How did you say it?
I said Elias, but that might be because of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, where he has that name spelled differently.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what maybe Morgan can let us know at some point. The three brothers, it said that over 900 years ago is when they created the universe and the earth. I'm thinking 900 years. I mean, that would have been really early in Earth's history. So this is almost like a history, before the history we know, before the dinosaurs even, or this could be an alternate universe. An alternate Earth. So yeah, I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, well, and I was interested in the, we have a 3-part deity, sort of. We've got these brothers that are all supposed to be cooperating to, have Earth, I guess, and they've sort of fallen apart. And so I thought that was also interesting. That's sort of the parallel universe, parallel world idea, I guess. Playing with that a little bit. Yeah, well, so the science fiction elements to me, I think it's mostly fantasy, but then there were a couple times when I was reading it, there were a couple little, I don't know if references is the right word, but terms that made me think science fiction-y. So there is at one point, some character, I forget which one, is looking up into the sky from Earth, and they can actually see some manifestation of regnum. I think it's like, a black ball in the sky kind of thing. And so that made me immediately think a little bit science fiction-y. We do know it's sort of not quite in the real world, but yet there it is hanging up in space. And then there were a couple points where the word simulations was used to describe some of the challenges that the characters are put through. And that, you could easily do that with magic, where the characters are sort of in their mind having all these visions that are the challenges that they're going through. But the use of the word simulations put me in that sci-fi.
And that was in the context of their military training, which is something that, because I was in the military, that is something that we did. We did simulations all the time, and we did that with machines.
Yeah.
So I simulate killing people through almost like an arcade video game machine, but it was more immersive.
Right, right. Yeah. Sci-fi element.
Yes.
Blended with in the fantasy world, it shows up as a sci-fi element. Yeah, well, and then, I kept applying the word romance to this book, which I'm not sure is technically correct, and I'm not sure if I read that somewhere, like a fantasy romance, but that was definitely where my brain went because we have the two main characters who are bound in a way that very easily leads to romance. And we have the alternating first person chapters is a key structure of the book. And so to me, I was like, okay, yes, this is romance.
Well,
But it was very light romance, right?
well, and you also had Aram, which was in Shaw, and in Emerton, she had her ancestor Afine. The two of those two were the ones who were the loves that
Right.
created that bond in the first place. So they each had the love of the, I don't know, the soul or the demon and the soul of the other one in each of them. So yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit, well, now I'm gonna use the word trauma in relation to we're talking about love, and I'm gonna say trauma, but, there is sort of a theme of, like, intergenerational trauma in the book because we have these decisions that their ancestors made that are really haunting and determining the lives of these main characters that just wanna be able to be themselves and make their own decisions, and they can't because of all of this inherited
yeah.
stuff, which is pretty cool thematically.
All right. So I think it's my turn to ask a question.
Sure, yeah, go right ahead. I'm scrolling down.
Looking at stuff. Well, what was your favorite part of the book?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna go with something not specific, but there's, sort of the tone and style of the writing I actually really enjoyed. So there's just something about, Morgan Lee's style that's just very accessible and just kept me really in tune with the action. So there's a lot that happens in this book. And I can't pinpoint exactly what it is, but just something about like the clarity of her individual sentences. It just kept me turning pages and wanting to read more. So I really like her style. What about you?
So I think I said I was going to say this at some point. So I want to preface that I am Morgan Lee's critique partner for her second book. So, and she is my critique partner, and she does have a very clear sense of style in her writing choices, and she's helping me on mine.
Oh, cool.
So that's been really great to be able to bear the fruits of that.
Yeah.
Writing style. So for me, my favorite parts, again, for me, I was the same as you. I don't have one specific spot, but my favorite parts were all the scenes between Emerton and Shaw when they were trying to figure out what their relationship would look like and how their friendship would form and where they would go from there.
Yeah, we got some really nice moments between the two of them. And I'm going to talk about poignant moments, I think, a little bit later in my notes. So we can come back to that. Well, so what was your least favorite thing?
My least favorite was seeing Emerton grow as a person, for her to start connecting with Shaw, just to slide back to me. She slid back at the end. So because in the end she made a choice that was more selfish. Wait, do we need to have like say spoiler alerts, guys?
Oh, yeah, I don't have a spoiler banner ready to go. Okay, mild spoilers.
Yeah.
You're not going to be specific, right? Mild spoilers.
Mild spoilers at the moment, yeah. So yeah, so I that was probably my least favorite because I was really I saw the background she came from. It's not a very pretty background when your own mom doesn't seem to care for you. So yeah, to go from that and see her start growing with Shaw. And I really love those scenes. Those were my favorite moments of seeing her grow and learn to start trusting. And then at the end, the choice that she made, which I think goes to something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to leave it there.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think my least favorite thing, which is integral to the story. So this is not like the story is bad, but it's just, it made me sad, is how much is driven by adults keeping secrets from the kids. Like the adults are just so manipulative. And so you mentioned talking about Emerton, how awful her mom was to her all growing up. I mean, she had a pretty brutal childhood. So we know from page one, like one of the opening scenes is Emerton in these brutal training fights with her mother, who is a member of the magical Pearson family and is trying to raise Emerton to be the most powerful Pearson ever. And so, yeah, it's a really rough upbringing. She's isolated from anybody who could get close to her. And yeah, just that sort of yeah, meanness and abuse from the parents, and it's on all sides. All of the adults are not great in this book, and not great in that I don't like them. You know, it's part of the story, so I'm not. It works well in the story, but it's just, you know, maybe.
Because I think there's this theme of obsession with power, which
Yes,
just, yeah.
yeah, yeah, and people who are, yeah, unwilling to let go of it at any
Mhm.
cost,
Yeah.
need to hang on to it at any cost. Yeah. And can't even see how much it limits them. Like her mom, there's a couple moments where Emerton is like screaming at her mother as various plots in the story unfold. You know, like, don't you see what's happening and all of this? And her mom is just sort of desperate to hang on to what she has. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so
Next
now
one.
I'm lost track where we are. Yeah.
Okay, so did you race to the end, or was it more of a slow burn?
Yeah, I definitely raced to the end. So, actually, this is part of my answer to a lot of the questions that we were discussing.
Yeah.
Is I just needed to know what happened. So this book is, I would say it's both character driven and plot driven. Like we're really in the heads of two main characters, get to know them well and understand their motives. But there's so much happening in the plot that, yeah, I just felt, you know, sort of raced along, and yeah, like I was constantly turning pages. How about you?
So I meant to go back and try to figure out where that point was. So in the beginning, I mean, it catches you right from the beginning. It starts going, you know, you're with her mom and what's going on there. And then you meet Shaw and his background in the academy or training where he's learning to fight. And then there's a point that it kind of slowed for a little bit for me. And I don't remember, I'm trying to remember where that was. I think it's I don't remember. I don't want to say it because I can't remember where it was at, but it kind of slowed down.
Mhm.
And then I'm thinking it was when they were trying to figure out and they were filling the bodies with the Shinori. Right
Oh
at
yeah.
that point, it started getting a bit slow for me because I wasn't really sure what was happening next. And then it just picked right back up again. And then then I read it all straight through. I didn't stop. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. We get a bit of a slower period as Emerton and Shaw are sort of connecting. They're getting to know each other a little bit, and they're starting to well, especially Shaw is starting to lay down plans for what needs to happen with building the army. And then we get like they're going after the Guardians and all this stuff starts happening and it
it was
gets
really
crazy.
quick. Yes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I did feel in retrospect, because I was just very caught up with the plot. But I do think it could have been slowed down more in other parts potentially. Like there's so much in the book that it, you know, it almost could have been two books that maybe had a little bit more room to breathe. So that was something else that, you know, I raced through it, but then after reading it, it's like, oh, well, you know, I could have used a little bit more at various points. So
I
yeah.
totally agree. I think it could have been 2 books. I do. I think it could have
Mhm.
been.
Yeah, I
So
think it's a planned trilogy, right? So, like, why not a what would be the word for a six-book series?
I
A
don't know.
sextuplet of books? I don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah. Just go full on Robert Jordan and just
There you go. And
having
keep on writing. Don't stop.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, so we've been talking about, like, some specific scenes and moments in the book a little bit as we've gone along, but, was there a specific scene that's really stuck with you the most?
And I couldn't tell you exactly why, but this is the moment that Shaw and Emerton first meet as they're older because they did know each other when they were younger. And you know, you're in both points of view several times before you get to the moment that Emerton's like on her way to go meet Shaw. And of course, he's just finished, mild spoilers, finished letting the Shinori take over and he killed everybody. And he's, you know, hurt. And Emerton is like, I'm not helping you. And he was like, I need help. And she's like, I'm not bound to you yet. I'm not helping you. And that scene just, it kind of sticks in my head. And that's their first official meeting as almost adults.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, yeah, no, that's a good point. Emerton definitely has, like, some great strong moments of just being like, "No, I'm
yeah.
not doing this stuff." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, she's a very strong character. Yeah, and I didn't have, like, a single particular scene, but I have sort of like a collection of scenes. So, one thing that I thought was really well done in this book is lots of, like, very brief, quiet, poignant moments that are often in scenes that have a lot of characters, because there is a big ensemble cast here, even though we only have the 2 point of view characters. And we'll have, within a room full of people, there'll be 2 characters that have sort of a moment of, connecting as an important piece of dialogue is happening or an important piece of planning was happening. So some of those connections were like, well, I mentioned people across the room, but Shaw internally has a lot of these poignant moments where he remembers his friend Soren, who I don't want to say a lot about, but comes from the trauma of Shaw's experience in the magical academy in the prison world Regnum. And so Shaw will have these moments of thinking about Soren, and that really provides such a good look into the motivation for his character, that he has, had these strong relationships and really has this like care for Earth and its creatures that is, sort of motivating him through all the trials that they're going through. And then Gwen and Vivian. So those are 2 side characters. And I forget, I guess Gwen is in Emerton's family. She's in the Pearson family, and Vivian is in the Lorimont family. And they're both bound to other people, but they are romantically in love, even though they're bound because of this curse and this family arrangement to other people. And so it's a little bit of a forbidden love. And they have lots of moments of those cross the room sort of connections. And again, it's motivation for the characters. It's like, this is why these 2 characters are fighting and going through all this trauma and everything. So I thought those like very brief, poignant moments were just so well done and were so great for driving the plot forward and making everyone's motivation really clear.
All right. So I think we kind of talked about the writing already. But do you want to talk about, were there any standout sentences to you that you
No,
found?
because I was going too fast.
Me neither. I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, I got to find one. Today I was like, I'm going to find one. And I kept reading.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I started reading the chapters over. I don't have time to read the whole chapter. Keep moving.
Right. Well,
So,
I'd be like in one room and I'd have like, I like to put little tabs in books as I'm reading if there's a specific sentence that I want to come back to. If you're reading in one room, my tabs would be somewhere else. And it's like, okay, but I know, somebody's about to die or like something's about to happen and demons are it's like I can't stop and go get my tabs.
yeah. Right.
So I don't have standout sentences. But yeah, again, just with the clarity of the writing, I mean, just so easy to just rip through. So and then the other thing about the writing is, so we mentioned that the structure of the book is these alternating chapters that are in the first person. And I normally mostly don't like first person narration, even though that's really common in YA, that's really common in romance. Those are both books that types of books that I love to read, but I often struggle with the first person narration. And I thought that worked really well in this book. One thing I don't like about it sometimes is that it can be hard to maintain the unique voice of a character in the first person. And I felt like these 2 characters, even though they have some similarities and some similarities in their experience, that Morgan Lee did maintain sort of those individual voices for the 2 characters. So I thought that was good writing.
Totally agree. I mean, to me, they are 2 separate characters for sure.
Yeah. And it's just interesting because they do have such similar childhood experiences with betrayal by their parents and brutal childhoods, but they sort of come out very different, which is very cool to see in the writing. So we've talked about standout sentences, and we talked a little bit about rereading and that sort of thing, but did you explicitly reread any passages that stood out to you?
I reread that ending I don't know how many times because, like, no, Emerton didn't make this decision. No, she didn't make this decision. I reread it. I missed something. Let me read it again. Okay, why is she making this decision? So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was enough to put that question in my mind, like, okay, I need to know what happens after this to know what was she really thinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We often get Emerton making like very quick snap decisions, and then we find out more about why she made it a little bit later as she sort of pauses and thinks about it herself. Yeah. She's very impulsive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a question from Margaret, actually, that I'll put up. I keep forgetting to read the comments. I'm sorry. Do you have any funny moments from the book? That's a great question.
It is, because I don't know that there are a lot of moments that are funny.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I think there was one scene, but I can't remember it all the way. And I think Lark was in it. It was something about, like, I don't remember. Gwen
Yeah.
and Viv were together, and Lark knew about it, but he was nonchalant. And he said something flippant, I think, and I don't remember what it was though.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't remember anything specific, but I think there were a couple flippant moments, and um, yeah, a lot of the book, there's just so much drama happening, and so I do
Yeah,
remember a
drama.
couple times where there would be a little bit of humor, and it was almost like, humor is stressful because there's like intense stuff going on. It's the end of the world. There's divine conflict. Like, um, yeah, yeah. So I don't remember the humor because I was so wrapped up in
Yeah,
the big
same.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, well, and so thinking about rereading, so I didn't go back because, I finished the book and then it was just like, okay, I gotta calm down. Um, yeah, but I do want to go read book 2, and when it comes out, and I'll definitely have to skim book 1, to remind myself of everything that happened and where the characters were. Yeah, and Morgan is chiming in. There's not a lot of funny here. I can put her thing up. Yeah, there's not a lot of funny. Soren is definitely a fun character. And actually, yeah, that's a good reminder because in the early chapters of the book, while Shaw is still in the Magical Academy, we have some silly scenes with him and Soren, some funny scenes. Yeah.
I think they're more silly than fun for me.
Uh-huh.
But he was levity in the pages. So
Yeah, well, and for reference, he's hybrid. He's a half giant, half fairy, right?
yeah.
And so some of my enjoyment of him just came from picturing him, in this
Mhm.
school setting, and you've got this giant with
Tiny
non-functional
little
fairy
fairy
wings. Yeah,
wings.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have some good scenes early in the book of just being teenage boys that are chasing girls and, sort of making fools of themselves. Yeah. So those are good moments. Yeah. Thanks for the reminder, Morgan. I totally forgot about Soren.
I did think about him for a second, but in my head I was like, it was just more of a levity I didn't find it like funny, haha funny. I just found it was just a little more levity. But I guess I could have
Yeah.
brought it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think for me, Soren, because he very quickly becomes like a very deep motivation for
Yeah.
Shaw. And for my brain, I think sort of compartmentalized him as like, no, Soren is very serious emotionally. Even though as a character, he definitely wasn't. So,
No.
yeah. Yeah, that was a great question, Margaret. Yeah, and so we've already I'm getting ahead of myself, I guess, but we've already touched on this a little bit. So are you gonna read another book by this author? You're already reading another book by this
Already doing
author.
it. Yeah. Already doing it. What about you? Well, you've already said. Yeah, you want to see the
Yeah,
next one.
yeah, I will. Yeah, I'm glad that we get a bit of a break. Yeah, I just need to know what happens. But I mentioned to Shanon as we were just chatting before we hopped on live, that the book was kind of stressful because the stakes were so high. I keep coming back to that, but it's just like the gods are fighting, everybody's caught in the middle. Like it's very stressful. So yeah, yeah.
So, what surprised you the most about the book?
Um, Yeah, I think there's a few places where the violence is not like it's not gratuitous and it's not sort of like Game of Thrones level of on the page gruesomeness, but it was more gruesome than I was expecting. So there's a few like pretty bloody scenes. So that was a little bit surprising to me.
I think I was most surprised by the ending. The ending just gets me every time I think about it. I was like, I had to read it a few times, like I said.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. I think Margaret said, "What's the title of the next book?"
Yeah.
She said, and so I think it's "Seed Among the Rocks," if I think I'm saying that right.
I
Seed Among the
think you're
Rocks.
right. Morgan can probably correct us. I should have looked that up
I
before we
did. I
hopped
just forgot
on.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
I wrote down a bunch of notes, but that was not one of those things I wrote down.
Right, an important note. We're still just so focused on the first book. So,
Yes.
yeah. And Morgan is apologizing for stressing me out. That's okay. I like getting stressed out by books. It's a nice getting stressed out by a book is a nice relief from getting stressed out by life and all the things that are happening in the world. So yeah, much rather get stressed out about a fantasy world.
Yeah. Kind of
Yes,
takes a
Seed Among the Rocks.
seed
Yes,
among the
that is
rocks. Okay.
awesome. Do you have a title? Well, uh, that might be a stressful question for me to flip the stress around. Do you have a title for the third book, Morgan, since we know it's supposed to be a trilogy?
And I think it's called the Seedling Trilogy overall.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, and actually, Shanon, another question that I thought about that I didn't mention beforehand actually, but was just if you had any thoughts about the title. So, I realized very belatedly, I think it's a biblical reference to the parable of the sower, where a farmer sows seeds on a path and on soil and among the thorns and among the rocks. So there's just imagery in the title, but I think there's also a biblical reference. Do you have any thoughts about that?
I didn't know the specific biblical reference, but I kind of figured I think it's a post that Morgan put up somewhere. I don't know if it was on her YouTube channel or somewhere that made me think of the Bible, and then you have the idea of these gods who made the
Mhm.
world, who made everything. You have they have the oh shoot, no, can't say that, that second book. So there was something else that plays into
Ooh,
that goes with it. So
I'm excited. Yeah. I need to
that
know
plays into
more.
the whole idea of biblical stuff. So I did wonder if that had something to do with it, but I didn't know what the exact reference would be.
Mhm.
Um, and I had thought about seed among the thorns. Well, I kind of saw the thorns as all these adults who have all these secrets who want nothing
Mm.
but power, and the seed is I took it more as Emerton is the one who's
Yeah, me too.
seed. So versus Shaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that we both ended up there because I think they get equal page time as
Mhm.
point of view characters, but I definitely was also like, "Oh, Emerton is the obvious seed."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and now thinking back, I'm just trying to think if there was anything obvious in the writing that signaled that. I mean, there clearly is something since we both took that away, I think.
The little I forget what the exact name for it is. She has those little at the beginning of every chapter. She has those couple of lines, um,
Yeah.
and sometimes some of those lines revolved around the sin of different things. So that's
Yeah.
another thing that kind of lead us probably to the idea of a biblical reference.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, what did you think about having those, like, couple of lines, almost like a little preface for each chapter?
Let me question: did they write it? Because at first I thought that each one was written by that individual character, and
Oh,
I thought, okay,
interesting.
yeah. Then I thought, maybe it's like a memoir kind of like thing they did later. But then I thought, well, maybe that came from somewhere else. So I liked it, but it did raise questions of, well, where is it being pulled from?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, those little, yeah, I don't know what to call them, but yeah, the little
They have a very specific name. I just don't remember what it is.
the writing thing. Margaret, you should be able to help us out if
You
you're
probably
still here.
know.
Yeah, she probably can't tell, I mean, what we're talking about, but it's yeah, it's like some people will
You
do
do like
like a
quotes or lines
yeah,
before the chapter actually starts. It's usually under the chapter number, and then you have the chapter after that.
yeah, and there's just a little thing, just a little thing. Um, yeah, and, sometimes they were really helpful, like, actually, we talked about did we reread any parts of the book? I actually would sometimes flip back if I had just finished a chapter. I sometimes would flip back to the beginning of the chapter and just reread that little, like, snippet that was at the start just to remind myself what it was and think about how it fit into the chapter, because some of them, it was very obvious, like, a foreshadowing for the chapter.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was like, okay, we're getting a little bit more of sort of an inner hint of what the character is going through in this chapter. Sometimes it was harder to tell. Yeah, so I thought those were really interesting. So epigraph, is that
I think that sounds right because I wanted to say
okay?
epitaph. I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah, not an epitaph. Yeah, that I looked at Margaret's comment. I was like, isn't that what we put on tombstones? But that's an epitaph, right?
I think so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's called
Yeah, and hi
epitaph.
Ryan. Ryan's here, or at least popped in briefly. Yeah, we're doing fancy tech with a live. Yeah. Um, oh, interesting. So Morgan is saying when she first wrote it, this was a contemporary story, so not even fantasy.
Hmm.
Oh, interesting. Cool. So are those epigraphs, are they now still very related to specific Bible quotes? Are they still Bible quotes, but we're pretending they're not because the Bible isn't in the fantasy world, as you mentioned.
They could have their own Bible. I mean, you do have gods.
Yeah, right. They could have 3 competing.
There you go, 3
Yeah.
different Bibles, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Elias, he's stuck in a trunk. I think he is in the first story, in this first book. He's stuck in a trunk.
Yes, yeah, which was actually yeah, that was, one of the parts of the story I thought was really cool when we go 'cause we hop around on some different continents and through some different
Mhm.
lands, and so going to that land, I forget what that group of people was called, but the people who are sort of the guardians or the people of Elias that are keeping his trunk safe.
I don't remember.
Um, yeah, I don't remember what they were called, but yeah, I really liked that part, and we get a bit more background on Shaw's character and where he came from, which is cool. Yeah. Okay, so we've been talking about what surprised us the most about the book. And did I said things were kind of dark and gruesome. Did we cover what you found surprising? That I'm
Um,
forgetting.
I don't remember.
Maybe we didn't get there.
Surprising. Oh, no, I did. The ending.
The ending. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The ending was surprising. Oh, and Morgan is saying yes.
Oh, okay.
There's still direct quotes from the Bible. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that.
Me neither.
Yeah. Well, I'm very impressed that you could find ones that fit what the characters were going through so well. Yeah, that's really well done. Yeah. Oh gosh, and Margaret asked, what would their books be called if written by different gods? The blurgle. The
Let's
blurgle is
see. So Demetrius, right? He's I always get these mixed up. He's in the one Regnum, so you might say, "Uh-oh, there goes my camera." Oh, you can probably still hear me, right?
yes, we can. Yeah.
So I think in order for me to reset my camera, I have to like pull completely out and come back in again.
Okay.
So let me jump out.
We talked about possible tech problems before. So for Shannon, it was the camera. For me, it might be the mic, except I finally did what I've been threatening to do for a very long time and bought a new mic, Go Me, which seems to be working. And here we have Shannon back. You're back.
Sorry, I don't know why my camera does that sometimes.
No worries. No worries. Yeah, so you were about to say something about
Oh,
Demetrius, I think?
so if Demetrius had his own book that was a Bible, he might be the hand guide to defeating Cornelius.
Yeah. It's very fun. The gods are not very godlike. They're
No.
very narrowly focused and
Yeah.
selfish. Yeah. I like the bedazzle. Margaret is very proud of me for buying a mic.
Yay.
Yeah, I was initially Margaret asked that question and I immediately thought of Demetrius and it would just be like, revenge.
Yes.
All he's about. Cornelius would be something maybe kind of pompous about
Yeah,
purity.
the sanctity of pureness.
Yeah, right. Something absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. I hope we learn more about Cornelius and Demetrius and Elias in the second book or the third book. I won't be too picky, but I do want to know more about them. Man, Margaret, you are throwing shade. The gods are very Greek, very petty, but yes. Yep. They've got their own concerns, and we do not understand what their concerns are. Yeah, well, and so, Shannon, how did your opinion of the book change as you read it, if it changed as you read it?
I think it changed pretty quickly. When it opens up with the scene that it opens up with is her, Emerton and her mom, and her mom's pushing her, and you automatically get that sense that her mom does not care about her as a person. And being a mom myself, and I think you're a mom, right?
Yeah.
I can imagine treating my child that way. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
I was like, but in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, I know this is setting it up for something, but I was like, this would be a hard scene for me to write. So, and it just made me in awe of what Morgan was able to do with her writing from there. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't expecting the book to be so intense. I keep coming back to being stressed out about it. But it was very intense, and that opening is very intense of just setting up that tension and that history between Emerton and her mom. And yeah, I also struggled with it as a parent of just like, I can't even imagine this. But I also can't imagine, I've never been in anything high stakes where my life is threatened or the future of my kid is threatened. And so throughout the book, I think we get a bit more that sort of empathy with that situation where these characters, it really is life or death, and they're not all responding well in that situation. They're not all making the best decisions. But it's like, if you put me in that situation, I guess I probably wouldn't either. Yeah, these people are under horrible stress. Not to excuse Emerton's mom being so brutal.
Right.
But yeah, it is just a situation that I can't put myself in. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I think we talked earlier about how there is sort of like a slow moment, maybe kind of like leading up towards the end of the first half or so, before the action really picks up again. And so I think I was like my momentum slowed a little bit in that slow moment. But yeah, but then the action just like started kicking in again, and character development with Emerton and Shaw, we started really seeing them start to change and grow up more. And so I sort of had like a little bit of a started high, dipped a little, and then I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's going on? Yeah. Um,
So,
yeah.
Beth Ann, you could ask the author anything who happens to be in the chat. What would
The
you ask her?
lurking author. Yeah, well, so yeah, I had written down that I'd love to hear more just about her inspiration, and sort of the process of designing the world and the characters. And we've talked a little bit about the biblical references. So, and certainly thinking through, like, we do have this sort of divine conflict that is different and creative and fantastical, but does mirror a little bit the Christian conflict that we have, in the Bible with like the fallen angel and all that sort of thing. So I think thematically, I am now like, oh, okay, I can see where some of these themes come from. But I think there's still a lot to unpack about just how she came up with some of the specifics of the world and her characters. Yeah. What about you?
How much of yourself did you put into your characters, especially Shawn Emerton, mostly?
Yeah. Are they both, different aspects, or? Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. My other question was going to be just a very grabby question, which was, can we get more page time for some of the secondary characters in future books? Because there are some great secondary characters, like Chloe, who we haven't talked about at all. I think I'm remembering her name correctly, but she's one of the instructors of Shaw in
She's one
the
of the
prison world. Yeah, and they have a tight bond.
Yes.
So I would love to, see more about Chloe. There's also the fairy royal family in the fairy kingdom who seem really cool. And then the two leaders of the giants, I think they're the leaders whose names I'm blanking on, but basically some of these other leaders of the rebellion against Cornelius sounded really cool, and I'd love to get more page time. So yeah, I was just going to be like, give me more, but that's greedy. Yeah, well, and then Margaret already asked us about comps, and we said we'd come back to it. So did this book remind you of any other books?
It didn't. And I know she threw out a few, and I'm like, no, it's not quite like that one. I think she talked about the Lanny Taylor. I don't know if I'm saying her name right. Taylor Lanny book, because I'm reading Strange the Dreamer right now, and I was like, nope, not like that one.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that author's gotten a lot of love on BookTube, I think, right? And I haven't read any of their work, which I should do.
Well, I was concerned with my third book going darker, and so my friend told me to read her. That's why I'm reading it, to get an idea of it. I think she also threw out the ACOTAR series. Well, she said that I've not read the ACOTAR series, and it's I think it's the male Rysand, but I don't know I think she might have said that in reference to I don't know, Emerton, maybe. I don't remember what she said now.
Yeah, we'll have to scroll back through the comments. Yeah, and she also mentioned the Angelborn book that I think she mentioned in your conversation about Blood Like Magic. And maybe she mentioned it in her wrap up. I'm getting all the videos confused, but I do want to read that Angelborn book. So yeah, well, and so it didn't remind me of any other books because I feel like there's a lot of unique stuff in this. And of course, fairies exist in other books and giants and things like that, but I think they're pulled together in a pretty unique and original way in this book. Yeah, and we've got an answer from the author. Very fancy. Shaw and Emerton are both parts of me. Emerton is that impulsive side that makes bad decisions sometimes. Yeah, can definitely see that. And Margaret answered your question about ACOTAR. Everyone and their parents in oh my gosh. Okay, what is it with these bad parents? I was like taking notes from fantasy books now. I'm like, what not to do as the parent of a 4-year-old.
I think on another live stream somewhere, someone asked me what was I think it was one of Margaret's streams, actually. She had asked me what was one of the tropes I didn't like or something I didn't like about the YA fantasy genre. And I was like, that the parents are always bad or stupid. I don't like that they're always put in that role for a lot of YA fantasy. Not to say that in Morgan's book, there is a very good reason. Like you said, people don't always react well under pressure, and they have literally the world on them. So they're going to be making certain decisions to do what they think is right, or their power hungry side. Some of them are power hungry. So
yeah, Margaret's pointing out people with bad parents go to fantasy. But I think there's a little bit of truth to that. And Morgan is going to give me what I want. She says she will give the side characters more page time. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move down through our notes.
One critique that I make, like, on all the pages that Morgan gives me for her second book, right? Every single time I'm like, is this original? Yes. I answer that same question the same way every time. Yes, this is original. It does not remind me of anything.
Right. Consistently original. Yeah, it's a good thing to be consistent on. Yeah.
Are there lingering questions from the book that you're still thinking about?
Oh gosh, yes. I mean, the one that I wrote in caps in my notes is just, what is going on with these gods? Like, I need to know what they're doing, because they are just, nobody knows what they're doing in the book. I mean, that's one of the cool things about this book, is we get so many different conflicting characters, and they all know just small pieces of other people's motivations, and nobody has the big picture.
Right.
Yeah.
My biggest lingering question when I finished the book, which was the reason why I read the ending several times again, was what motivated Emerton to make that final decision that she made.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're right. It is. She shows a lot of character development, and then the final decision is a bit of like, wait, weren't we past this? Yeah. But as Morgan pointed out, Emerton is impulsive.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see as we get into book 2. Okay, and then I think the final commentary that we wanted to make was on the 2 point of view characters. So Shanon, was there one that you liked more than the other, or one you sympathized with more?
So Morgan will know my answer already because we've talked about it, but my favorite character is Shaw. You know, I like and I appreciate where Emerton's coming from. And yes, they both have similar backgrounds, although I would say Emerton's was more restrictive, because at least Shaw had, like, he can move, he had friends he can make. You know, Emerton was put in basically in the basement, right? She was stuck in the basement at the very time that she took on the ancestor. So it does make her a more damaged character, which I think makes it harder to understand her motivation sometimes. So yeah, I connected a lot more with Shaw, and I think because Shaw did have friends, especially Soren. You got to see the connection he had with Soren. You could identify with it, and it helped, I think, to develop his character because he had that connection.
Yeah, the one connection that we see Emerton have, of course, she's making new ones as the story progresses. She's starting to come out of her shell a little bit, but the one connection that she had from earlier in her life, she treats that person pretty badly. In this book. Yeah. So my answer is the same as yours. If it comes to like who I like, I do like Shaw a bit better. I could imagine sitting down and having a conversation with him and, getting along okay. Like that's always sort of a test of like, could I tolerate being in a room with you for a little while? And Emerton, it's not that I dislike her, but just so much of her actions in this book are impulsive and selfish, and like with good reason. I mean, she has only known bad stuff until this book happens, but it does mean that it's hard to actually like her, even if I sympathize and empathize with her quite a bit. So I'll be really curious to see how her character develops in the second book, because I think we do sort of see her learning, a bit more of, honestly, sort of social skills and how to have relationships and things, because she hasn't had those examples or opportunity before. So it'll be cool to see if she develops that further in the second book. Yeah. Well, cool. All right. We're coming up on an hour pretty soon here. So do you have any final wrap-up thoughts about this book that you'd like to share?
I hadn't thought about this one.
Yeah, sorry,
Overall,
a question
no,
on you.
sorry. Overall, I enjoyed the book. I mean, I don't think I would have put myself out there to volunteer myself to Morgan's like, hey, I heard you're looking for a critique partner. I would, I'm looking for one. I'd love to be able to read your second book. And so if I didn't like the book, right? So I hadn't quite finished it all the way when I had approached her on it. But I mean, that, like I said, that beginning is very powerful. Those first, I'd say 10 to 12 chapters, I think are very, very powerful to bring you into the world and it was submersive for me. And the world building and everything along with it. And she doesn't tend to rattle off. This is one thing I just love about her writing, right? She doesn't tend to rattle off like everything about the world all at once. You get a little bit here, a little bit there, and it comes naturally in the rhythm of her writing. So yeah. I enjoyed the book.
Yeah, awesome. I'm typing a quick response. Do you see an opportunity for music? We're going to leave that to you, I think, Margaret.
Yeah. You're the music queen here.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love your answer, Bethy.
I'm now putting a lot on Soren. I'm like, yes, he gets the levity in the book. He can do the musical number.
With his little fairy wings.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I like Soren. Yeah. I'm going to have to reread the first few chapters now so I can remind myself about Soren. Yeah. Margaret says, boom. Now I'm reading it. Yeah. Awesome. Well, great. It was a pleasure talking about this book with you. Thank you for signing up to do the buddy read with me. I'm so glad that I got exposed to a new book and a new author. It's going to be really exciting to keep following Morgan and see where she goes from here. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad to have met you. I'm just foraying into BookTube, so it's nice. This person I knew is Margaret. Now I know you.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sort of, as a non-author, I don't really know what I'm doing watching all these Authortube channels, but it's just so cool to hear about people's process and to then feel like I get like early access to books no one else is reading. I get to pretend a little bit like I'm Margaret and read books people have never heard of, which is really fun. So, yeah. All right. Well, everyone, if you haven't already bookmarked Morgan's channel, let me put her link in the chat one more time. It will be in the description box down below. And so you should all head over there. She has been posting more content lately, sharing. She's been doing some readings from this book that we talked about today, and she's been doing some Authortube content about her writing process and progress. So head on over there. And yeah, I'll see you all in my next video, and hopefully we'll have Shanon back on the channel again sometime.
I'd love to be back.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.